Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. What up, Not So Average listeners? This is Alistair Shipley, and I thought I'd do a little bonus episode because one of my favorite parts of the podcasting year is actually when a lot of the programs that I listen to did recaps and summaries of their wins, their losses, what they learned, what they felt they could have done better at. And I thought I'd do the same. I realized that we started this podcast near the end of 2024, but I thought this would be an opportunity to share a little bit about myself as well as some of the things that I really put a lot of focus in that actually gave me a lot of reprieve and also helped drive me into creating better habits that I'm going to carry into 2025. So this year was really interesting for me. 2024 was filled with a lot of personal milestones that were hit. I had a big achievement in my life, shared with my little brother. Him and I finally made the move and became first-time homeowners. This was really exciting. But around that same time frame, we had some losses in our family. We lost a longtime pet, rest his soul, Wyatt. We had him in our life for about 14 years. But this period of time was really exciting for us. Ethan and I got a house really close to where we had been living for a period of time. And then I also started in an executive role at a solar company based here in Calgary, Alberta, which for a lot of people would be terms for a lot of excitement. For me, I was excited, but the reality was with this role came a lot of responsibility that I was unsure of at the time. And looking back at it now, we're about 10 months into it now. There have been so many learnings from this. Now, this organization grew incredibly quickly, and we grew to, during certain times of the year, hundreds of reps in our program, and that brought a lot of pains that I had to learn as a first-time executive. It was incredible, but with it came a lot of stress. And you're going to hear this a lot through this bonus round or this bonus episode. Stress was the underpinning emotion, feeling, whatever you want to describe during 2024. From there, the year was off to a pretty darn good start. We bought our new house, moved in, hosted a lot of gatherings for our really close friends, and that's something that both my brother and I really appreciated doing. I found a partner. We celebrated the summer like I've never done before. Now, this summer in Alberta is really special. We have incredibly long nights, so you can imagine the sun popping up at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and not setting until about 11 o'clock at night. But this time of year where it's actually warm enough to really appreciate it is approximately about 12 to 16 weeks. So when you break that down to the amount of weekends that are available, 12 to 16 weekends is not very much, and it goes by really quickly. I sandwiched as much as I possibly could into those weekends as though I was trying to make up for lost time. So I saw every single concert I possibly could. I went and visited every friend that I possibly could. And I actually made several trips down to Nashville, Tennessee, where I got to admit, my heart is in Nashville. I love that city. As a country music fan and a big-time two-stepping dancer, Nashville is just something special about it. It just really pulls me in. And this year, I took the opportunity of going 3 times, twice for some dance festivals where I was actually learning and taking workshops and just growing my ability to become a better dancer, and one to celebrate a really close friend that was finally stepping into his 30s, a little guy. Now, why I brought this up about the breakdown of 16 weekends, I was really excited about sharing this period of time with my friends, with my partner at the time. And what I thought was just simply living in the moment, now in retrospect, actually was an aspect of burning the candle at both ends. I really enjoyed the time that I had, but I wish I took the time to slow it down. It was as though I had no period to rest, and it started to compound and started to lead to a lot of other things in my life. Nearing the end of August, my family had a sudden loss of my grandfather, somebody that actually helped raise my brother and I. My family was closely tied to my grandfather and my grandmother. My brother and I spent most of our after school periods with them up until about middle school or junior high. And my grandfather was a very healthy guy, and then suddenly he was admitted to the hospital for some conditions. And I was over in British Columbia, which is the province beside Alberta, celebrating the summer. And I get a phone call that I have to come home. And at that point, things started to drastically change in my personal life, as well as in my career, things with my family, things with my partner. The stress of losing somebody was drastic. And it led to a lot of family dynamics that I guess we didn't fully process at that time. And it took some other come to Jesus moments to really notice what actually was happening. I found out that although I was very aware of stress in my life, it was something that was snowballing. And frankly, I was blind to it. It took some actual coming to Jesus moments this year that made it too obvious for me to look away from, that these were things that I needed to address. About Q3 of this year, I had some situations where I've never actually encountered this before, but my brother very respectfully and very meaningfully basically told me that the way that I was showing up for our family was very toxic. How I was handling my emotions, how I was quick to react, and my responses were far from my usual. And my little brother brought this to my attention just kindly when he actually gave me one of my birthday presents and just passively just made mention of it was for a rage room where you could go and smash any belongings that you could get your hands on. And I thought it was funny, but then he brought it up later on in the week when I came down to him and mentioned something that had come up, and he said, yeah, part of this was a gift for you to find some relief and relieve a lot of your stress that has been building up, because unfortunately, your emotions have been negative and toxic. So that was the first come to Jesus moment. And then I had my partner at the time bring up that my stress was starting to compound on them as well. So this led me to a lot of personal growth in this later half of the year. One thing that I can say that I've been very lucky and blessed with is having a really strong network of friends and family around me. When my grandfather passed, and then my brother brought to my attention that I was having a toxic relationship with my stress, and how that was coming out for the family was not positive. I had the scenario of my partner and I separating. That brought a lot of introspection into my life at a moment that I didn't really realize I needed it. The crazy thing was, a quote that kept coming up throughout this year was that life has a habit of putting lessons in front of you until you're willing to learn them. I had it brought to my attention several times throughout the year that my stress wasn't being handled in its usual forms. I personally have a lot of outlets that I've always utilized and leaned on when things got really tough. That would be things like jiu-jitsu. I'm a big Brazilian jiu-jitsu fan. Don't get me started on it. Don't paint me with the same brush as Joe Rogan or anything like that. I actually fell into it just haphazardly when I was living in San Francisco. But I cannot say enough good things about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There's something about this fight or flight response that when you are in the thick of it, when you are feeling incredibly low, when you're feeling like you're personally just making mountains out of molehills, showing up, your lizard brain cannot allow you to focus on those stresses because somebody is literally enforcing their will on you and pushing your cardio and legitimately beating you up if you're not paying enough attention. So I've always had that. I also had dancing. Then I had my friend group, and then I had the outdoors. But everything was compounding. My stress was a lot, and I had to start focusing on this. I started to really look into like, how can I improve how I show up with my stress? Because my ultimate goal is to be a great future father when that opportunity comes to me, and an even better partner to whomever I fall in love with. Now, for that, I cannot be a reactive partner. I have to be somebody that takes the time, ingests the information that's brought to me, and then, as my friend put it, catch it, check it, change it. So catch the emotion, check it. Is this a valid concern? Is this something that's actually within my control, or is it outside my control? And then change my view on it. If I want to be an incredible partner, if I want to be an incredible father, I have to understand what is within my control and what's outside of my control, and just let it go. And so with acknowledging what my North Star is, and I just said it, being a father, being a great husband, I started to focus on like, where can I have the biggest impacts? Where can I find reprieve? And the first place that basically started was through meditation and journaling. Now, this sounds very cliche, and I'm one of the people that has actually heard every single podcast I've been on just bring this up. Now, the thing about journaling that I really fell into was the fact that my analytical brain could really cling to it. I could write something out and then revisit it in 1 day, 2 weeks, 3 months, and actually see the change in my thoughts from where I was at in that moment when I'm looking back and where I was at that point in time when I was writing it. So I really enjoyed that. But the thing that actually stuck with me was through Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. He was actually on a podcast, and I bring this guy up a lot because he is my gold standard, Chris Williamson. He was on the show and he talked about how when he was younger, he got in the habit of journaling, and he told himself that he was going to journal every day no matter what. He was going to journal when things are bad and when things are good. And what often happens is people get in the habit of journaling when things are bad. Me too. I did that same thing previously. Now this time I was actually intentional about writing down everything that was going on in my head that needed to be processed. And then when things were going really well, I wrote those things out too. So when things were going really bad, I can go back to this and be like, there's my little achievements that nobody else is going to give me a pat on the back for, but I'm appreciative of. So that's things like getting acknowledgement from your friends for some little things. That's you did something great at work. That was you gave back to a homeless person on the street, whatever that was. I also started to put a lot of focus on seeking mentors. And fortunately, I do have a fantastic group of friends around me, but one thing that I really wanted to narrow in on were the characteristics that I wanted to see in myself that I generally found in people that had great partnerships with their spouses and their kids and still had very amazing working careers. So I actually started to do coffees and dinners with guys that I just absolutely idolize. There's quite a few people from my jiu-jitsu. There was actually my close friends that I went to university with. I made intentional moments where we would all get together and I'd sit down and I'd just pepper them. I'd ask them questions about their careers. I would ask them about what they were doing with their spouses. I'd ask them where they thought that they could improve, where the heck they could help me improve. And that was huge. So I started to build up my network once again. And then from there, I actually got into meditation as well. Meditation has been a huge thing for me this year. And somebody that's in their 30s, I guess I'm in my mid 30s now. Holy smokes. There is a lot of habits that you've learned over the course of your life. And so just reading Atomic Habits or checking every Reddit forum that says it takes 21 days to create a habit, you got to reframe that. If you're at this stage of your life, or if you're even in your 20s, you have to acknowledge you have to rewrite X amount of years that you've been around in those habits that you've created. I've gotten in the habit of doing meditation every single day at the start of my day, good or bad, does not matter. And then sometimes I pepper in just a little bit of meditation when I feel like I need to check in on myself because I can feel the tension rising. Now, I'm at 100 days straight of meditation for about 15 minutes a day. And for me, that feels really powerful. And I feel a huge amount of reprieve in comparison to what I was 100 days ago. But I also acknowledge that there is so much more I have to do. There are some days I'm sitting there and I cannot get my brain to rest and get into that meditative state that everybody talks about. But I understand that I am improving and I am making those little changes that are worth it. So that was some of my key points that I was utilizing to start addressing my anxiety and my stress. So that was journaling, that was seeking mentors, and also there was meditation. But I am a hyper analytical person, and that's not where I stopped. I had to sit down and actually think, like, where else can I find step changes in how I show up with my stress and anxiety? And some of those areas are like, where can I make more changes? Where can I see that 1% change every single day? What could give me the athletic edge, if you would? So through journaling, I started to evaluate things like what brings me joy and what brings me purpose. So purpose is something that I have battles with quite frequently. And I'm not saying that I don't know what my purpose is, but I have an issue with how social media has clung to the term of find your purpose. You might have heard me when I spoke with Zach Hartley on episode 3, and I asked them about the people pursuing their purpose and if they should do that as a career. And he bluntly indicated, if your purpose does not make you money, you have to find something else that does. It's a privilege to find a career in your purpose. That said, where could I find purpose? So maybe if I didn't find it in my career or I wasn't finding it in other areas of my life, I still felt fulfilled. That actually led me to Not So Average, the podcast. My purpose and where I find the most joy is actually in communicating with others. A weird point to be bringing up when you're staring at a camera in front of a bunch of other people that are staring back at your picture on their screen. But in real life, I really appreciate just sitting down, having a heart-to-heart with somebody and hearing them, hearing their stories, and just communicating through the good, the bad, it doesn't matter. I have been perpetually curious about people ever since I was a kid. And so when I came to that realization, that's an area that I could find a lot of purpose outside of my career. I started Not So Average, the podcast. Now, as you understand, the mission of this podcast is redefining success and basically indicating to others that there's aspects of ourselves that are far from average. But at its core, this podcast is an opportunity for me to continue to have conversations with people that I find to be super freaking interesting. So that was the fourth thing that started to help me with managing my stress. So there was journaling, mentorship, reevaluating my purpose, meditation. But where else could I make huge improvements in my personal health and mental health? I actually had a therapist walk me through the difference of breathing with your chest versus breathing with your stomach. These are just components that I'm not going to get into the medical terms of it, but basically the different types of breathing in your chest versus in your stomach invoke different responses and they calm you down differently. So I started to work on my breathing through, I guess this is your diaphragm. Is your diaphragm? Don't come at me, internet. But basically breathing through my stomach. So every time that I felt that I needed to take a second and pull back because maybe somebody came at me at work, maybe there was a traffic situation where I was cut off and I wanted to be super reactive, I took Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, and I introduced a breath. So I would take a big breath in through my nose, inflate my stomach, and blow it out. And most times that was enough of a step change that I was off of that. So I introduced breath work. Where else I made changes in my health and my stress management was through improving my sleep hygiene and adding supplements to my life. So it was fun because I did a lot of research and papers and going through things on vitamin D. So as is common when you're going through big changes like I had this year and grieving, there was points in time where I felt very depressed. So the papers that I was reading on was how people are counteracting depression and what was commonly found in depression. And one of the articles that came up, now I'm once again not a doctor, I was just reading this as an independent person, but they brought up that vitamin D was generally found to be deficient in a lot of people that had depression. Now, I don't know the science on it. My brother's definitely thrown it at me that vitamin D supplements aren't enough, and I agree. You still need the sun, but I started taking not just 1 drop of vitamin D, but 5x, because in this paper, they said that generally we are extremely deficient and to up your dosage beyond the daily recommendation. I'm not saying to do this, but I did find by adding vitamin D and 5xing the ingestion that I was taking, my mood and my energy did see a gradual tick up. And that's what all of this stuff is about, is not like a 50, 100% change. We're talking 5% here, 5% there, 5% here, 10% here. And after several years of taking these recommendations and putting these habits into your daily routine, you're going to find that you come a long way. So vitamin D, the other thing that I really got into, and guys, I strongly recommend this, ashwagandha. So ashwagandha, once again, not a medical person, but I found a huge amount of papers that talked about its reduction in stress, improving sleep, and then things helping the boys in terms of their sexual drive. Check that out on your own. But I did find that ashwagandha gave me the same reprieve as, say, CBD. CBD is a component found in cannabis. It's separated from the THC standalone. People say that it gives them a sense of calm, as if they had a breath. I had a very similar situation to that with ashwagandha. I took it within 30 minutes. I just felt lit. I felt like that mental fog that generally comes in when you're feeling a little anxious and stressed was cut. It was gone. So that was great. The other area where I found huge changes was in my sleep habits. So, sleep hygiene. We've heard about this a lot before. One of the worst things for our sleep hygiene is generally screen time before bed. I'm the freaking worst for this. I will openly admit that. It's so easy to crawl into bed, swipe through your messages, send memes to friends, check what happened in your loved ones' lives, you name it, and then fall down the mindless swiping, meanwhile sending all that blue light at yourself. I got in the habit of kind of winding down about 45 minutes to an hour before I wanted to be in bed. So I'd set ambient lighting in my room I have a salt lamp. And then I have no problems admitting this whatsoever. I love a good candle, as long as it's not super stinky, but I love a good candle. And I'd sit down, read a book, or if I'm going to be on a screen, I wore these dorky blue light glasses. So I got in the habit of doing that. But the habit that actually probably made the biggest change in my life was adding blackout curtains. This sounds crazy. So as somebody that was traditionally a very quick to fall asleep person, I'm meaning like my head hit the pillow and then I'd wake up at the alarm for most of my life. Within the last 4 years, that has changed. I'm still quick to going to sleep. It's like my superpower. I can borderline do the standing up. But within the last 4 months, not the last 4 months. Within the last year, my sleep got so bad that I was up every couple of hours, generally because of how I was stressed out. But there was also components that I think was because I've had extreme amounts of light coming from the streets into my bedroom. So I introduced blackout curtains to my room, and it was night and day, no pun intended. But my sleep drastically changed. I started to sleep straight through the night immediately. With that, I started to wake up a lot more rested. I was waking up about an hour before my alarm clock. And there was no longer any morning fog that I had. There was no need to like press snooze. I was at it and my brain was firing on all cylinders. So for me, the biggest changes in my life that I found and helped basically counteract some of my stresses was, once again, introduction of some supplements. So that was vitamin D, I 5X'd it, ashwagandha, improved my sleep hygiene. So being conscious of what I did before bed. So winding down with a good book, limited screen time. If I did screen time, it was blue light glasses, and then adding blackout curtains to my room. Then on top of that, as I'd mentioned several times, there was meditation and deep breathing, breath work. There was journaling, as well as finding purpose and joy. So those are probably my big components of the year, my biggest takeaways, and things that I'm most actually proud of is this introduction of things and the acknowledgement of how stress is showing up in my life. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually sitting down with a friend and we were just shooting the breeze as we normally did. And it was crazy to me because I sat down and I told him I had always come to the realization that I had to be a very active person and be focused on my health because I was of the understanding that my family genetics was always going to be high strung and stressed. And because I knew that stress leads to a lot of health issues, I would have to counteract my family's genetic stresses to stay alive longer. And in that moment when I shared it with him, I was like, that's freaking nuts that I've always believed that I just need to be healthy because I came to terms with the fact that I'm always going to be stressed. Now, outwardly, most people would say before this year that yes, I'd run a little stressed, but I was generally really easy going. I was very calm, but this year was different. And in that moment, I realized I have to freaking combine everything that I'm focusing on right now in terms of how I show up with stress. And I need to actually start addressing the stress itself right now. And that is what my mission is going to be. And that's going to carry into 2025. Other things that have actually been incredibly awesome about this year that I didn't actually expect, and I thought I'd just share these. I added some additional health practices that kind of caught me off guard. I did a 30-day parasite cleanse. And now, don't come at me with, once again, all the science behind it. At the time, my partner was a doctor, and she was very focused on basically the impacts of parasites and molds and how it could show up in different ways and how it could lead to bloating and actually mitigate some of the treatments that she was doing with some of her own patients. And so she wanted to explore this stuff herself. For me, it was way over my head. And at the time, I thought it was a little hokey. Fast forward to the end of the 30-day challenge, I went all in. I didn't miss a single period of time of supplements. And at that point, at the beginning of the 30 days, I had believed like I just had a stress pooch. I had basically this ring around my stomach that I didn't think that I could shake. And it was just due to stress. I did as much cardio as I possibly could. It couldn't disappear. At the end of this 30 days, my bloating in that ring was nearly entirely gone. I won't get into the gruesome details of all the stuff that also came up. This parasite cleanse was a huge value add to my year at 2024. I'm definitely going to do another one. If you're curious about it, I'm going to share the link in the show notes. There's no kickback to me whatsoever, but disclaimer, you should probably talk to somebody about this that is an expert. But what I did find was my intolerances for certain foods had drastically changed. My stress pooch disappeared, and that was all I freaking needed. Other amazing achievements for this year was just kind of the introduction of a monthly guys meetup. Sounds a little crazy, but I just needed to surround myself with guys that I really valued. These are basically people that I idolized, I respected, and I wanted to learn more from so that I could better myself. So I started introducing a monthly meetup. And the really cool thing that has come from this was I basically started to introduce different people from my friend groups to one another. And the guys that showed up all openly admitted like this was a great opportunity for them to expand on their network. They didn't get opportunities like this more often. Just the sheer effort of putting something together was a huge value add for them. And they really appreciated our friendship because of it. This is something that I've been doing now for the last 3 months. If you guys ever get the opportunity, please just try and do gatherings with your guy friends, your dude friends, your manly friends. I don't care. We often hear about women's wine nights and all that kind of stuff, but guys, get out there, go hang out with your buddies. There's a huge benefit for you. The other thing that I'm really actually quite proud of is this year has brought me closer to my brother. He does not listen to this podcast. He's never going to hear my voice online. He's already sick and tired of it in real life. But through moving in together and his brutal honesty about how my emotions were showing up and they were toxic really strengthened my views of him. And I've taken more of an effort to see him where he's at. Those are some other things that I'm really proud of. And then one other thing that I was wanting to really bring up with people, as I started this podcast, I really ran down some rabbit holes about improving listening skills. It was crazy. As I started to do more journaling, as I did more meditation, as I spent more time with these men's meetups, I started to notice that people feel less and less heard. It's incredible how we have these little devices in our pockets at all times that connect us to thousands, if not millions of people at any given point. And we can basically broadcast our opinions or our thoughts at any given time. But yet, in that noise, people don't feel heard. By me listening to myself, I was better situated to start listening to others. By giving myself a level of compassion, I was able to give others more compassion in terms of conversations. And this was actually really brought to my attention when I was with a couple friends and they opened up about their past relationships. And then it snowballed into a conversation that I had outside of the jiu-jitsu gym. I was out there with a friend that I've known for several years. And I'm not even going to get into the dynamics of mat friendships, but what you do on the mats, you beat the crap out of each other. And it's remarkable how little you end up knowing about somebody after such a long period of time, even though you share this connection of just an ass whooping. We were outside, they were getting to their vehicle, and we got on the topic of what was going on in their family life and their personal life. And in that moment, I immediately understood that it wasn't my time to basically give them advice. It was the case that they just needed to be heard. And I started to offer questions that had them open up more. They told me afterwards that they felt like it helped a ton. This actually set me on a rabbit hole where I started to do a lot of research on TED Talks about improving listening skills. And there's this component of, there's a difference between listening and hearing. You might be listening to somebody, but did you really hear them? And so I fell into this book that I've listened to and read so many times called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. I'm going to leave that in the show notes. But it's basically about improving the connection through listening to others. It's remarkable how many times you think that you're having a conversation with somebody, but you just redirected the conversation to something that you're narrowly focused on or an expert in or something that you've experienced. And frankly, it doesn't help these people. There's a really wise person that sat across from me during breakfast one day and said, often when people come to you, they're looking for one of the 4 H's. They want to be helped, heard, hugged, or humped. Which one of those 4 are you willing to offer? That's always stuck with me, and it still makes me smile when I think about it. Guys, this year was quite the roller coaster, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm so excited that it actually led me to starting this podcast. It's been a great opportunity to reconnect with people that I just have always appreciated within my own networks. And now I'm getting to the point where my friends are introducing me to their friends that should be on this show. And I can't wait to give you the tidbits and the golden nuggets at the end of 2025. I know it's a year away, but there is so much to come. So my big year, the focus is that I'm bringing into 2025 is how do I show up with stress and anxiety, and how does that impact others? And I'm just really appreciative that this stuff was brought to my attention when it was, because of the hurt that I was experiencing. I was finally able to acknowledge that this was a pain that needed to be addressed. So I'm very grateful for that. I want to close off with a few things. People have asked me, because I am a very big reader, which books do I recommend to others? So I have 3 books. You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. Once again, this will be in the show notes. This is how to improve basically communication skills through listening. The second one that was a huge one for me back in October was How to Make a Few $Billion by Brad Jacobs. This is a nonfiction. This is a guy that was the CEO and founder of several companies that were worth somewhere, which is a few billion, some are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And he basically breaks down the team dynamics, acquisitions, mergers, you name it. So if you're a business buff like I am, strongly recommend this one. Also going to be in the show notes. Then lastly, the book that really just let me escape from my own head for a little bit was the book called Trust by Hernan Diaz. This was actually a Pulitzer Prize winner for, I think, 2023. And this book, you definitely got to get into it. It's about a Rockefeller persona, if you would, where this person was worth billions upon billions of dollars and basically could change the entire outcome of the dirty 30s. And then this interesting dynamic that he had with his wife. And it just kept me stuck to every single page. So go check that one out. The other things that I wanted to close off with is memorable quotes and little sayings that have basically stuck around in my head rent free. And these are sometimes they're driving factors for people. So these are why I'm sharing them, because they definitely were for me. So somebody that was really close to me continuously said this, and this has been why I've been focused on the things that I have been. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Keeping that positive view of this isn't happening to you because you did anything wrong. This is happening for you as an opportunity. Another one came from the same person, but it was something that I had clung to a couple of years previously. Life presents lessons until you're ready to learn them. I brought this up before. I had come to the realization about how stress was going to impact my life and how I needed to address it. But until I had the come to Jesus moments with my ex-partner and my little brother, I wouldn't have actually sat down and felt this pain enough to have made a change. So life had shown me these lessons, and I was finally ready to learn them. The next one is actually more of a prayer, but this one's called the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There's a lot of things that are going to be out of your control. May you have the strength to do what it takes to make a change when it's necessary, but then also the knowledge and the learnings to understand the difference between those things out of your control and the things within your control. And then another great friend put this in front of me, and I love it. Don't waste an opportunity. Opportunities come in different forms. And I think this next quote encompasses it as well. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. That was Seneca, one of the Stoics. Be prepared. And then when those opportunities come in front of you, people will say maybe that was luck. But it's because of your preparation and your ability to acknowledge an opportunity that you were able to basically move yourself forward. Don't waste an opportunity. For me, there were several of them this year that I pounced on. I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to let it go by. Guys, we're at the end of 2024. I didn't expect that I was going to ramble this long. I didn't think I'd have this much to say. There was a post that I made on my personal Facebook as well as my LinkedIn that the reason why it took me so long to start this podcast was because I had this feeling of, I guess it'd be an imposter syndrome. I didn't believe that I had enough to share with people. I didn't have those levels of achievement that would make me reputable. But through a lot of kind words and feedback that I've been receiving through this podcast, people just like the fact that I've authentically shared who I am. I've brought on people that have also in turn been really authentic. And because they're relatable, the little tidbits of advice that they're receiving from the podcast have really just rang true. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to these podcasts. Your support means the world. Without you guys, I wouldn't probably be able to do this. It's the support of the friends and the family and the sharing and constantly saying, this is something that we need to hear more often. So I appreciate that. I look forward to sharing more in 2025. And if you guys have the opportunity to share this information with others, I'd really appreciate it. That means just a reshare, a subscribe on all the platforms where you find me. Hey, 2024 is coming to a wrap, but I'm really excited to see what 2025 brings. So let's get after it.